Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Give me just a second here, since apparently my ears are not going to work. That's always fun. Let me tote these off. That's eccentric. All right. I don't know where that came from, but the ears didn't work. The song ran, and I couldn't hear anything at all. Welcome to the program. Today is Thursday. It's May the 14th. That's about right for today. That's about right for the way it's going to go, so we'll just wear the bigger earphones and make it happen. When I was in the military, I learned that 2 is 1, 1 is none. I've always got a backup for most things. All right, so we've got a lot going on today. There's a ton. This is episode 800 of the Kyle Seraphin show. That seems like a ton of episodes. I feel like I've been talking for years, and then I realized that it's only been a couple years. This has not been something I've been doing my whole life, but here we are. Okay. Today, we're coming on the heels of maybe my best thumbnail ever. If you guys don't know, that is my single biggest hassle every morning. I'm not an artist. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a photojournalist. So being able to put something that is visually interesting and appealing in a format that I can actually repeat on a regular basis, that's my single biggest headache. And yesterday we knocked it, like whether you liked it or not is irrelevant. I loved it. It was my favorite for episode 799. I created a picture of Kash playing with a cobra that had an FBI emblem for a head. And it made me so happy. It was the peak of my thumbnail capabilities. Today is one that I'm actually seriously proud of, and it was the easiest one that I've done. It's a picture of James Erdman III. He's a CIA whistleblower. He's a friend. He's one of the people that helped get the federal injunction against the COVID vaccine mandate for federal workers. So if you're a federal worker and you didn't have to continue on with the COVID vaccine garbage that went on under the Biden administration, Jim is one of the people that you can thank for that. And yesterday, he showed you exactly what a pair of brass balls looks like. He went out and he testified, put his face, into the record. He put his name behind it, and he sat in front of a Senate hearing to talk about COVID origins. And that doesn't sound all that crazy in today, in this moment. But I'm going to talk about what it actually represents. There's an ongoing series of conspiracies and lies that have not been made right for all of us. COVID, January 6th, the fact that our government is not actually serving the people and it continues to serve itself, and they proved it by going after him as a whistleblower even yesterday. We're still dealing with the sins of the last 5 years. Forget the fact that there have been sins that have been going on for decades that we haven't really straightened out. And so Jim was able to talk about a few things like MK Ultra, CIA mind control programs. He talked a little bit about JFK, the ongoing efforts of transparency that we were promised under the Trump administration. And what we continue to find out is that the government doesn't want that, as though the government actually is allowed to have a will at all. And so for all the people that continue to use the expression, we the people, when are we the people going to do this? There is no we the people represented in those agencies. They serve themselves. They think they know what's best. They're all the hero of their own story. So it's not like they're out there trying to be villains. They just don't think that you deserve to know. They don't think that you can handle knowing, and they don't think it would be good for you because they think they can make better decisions for you. And for me, there is nothing more disturbing and leftist in mindset than the government is its own God and that these people do service to that God. So when we talk about idolatry, it doesn't matter who you put up as your golden calf and your idol. We have it, and they are the people that work in government actually think they're doing the right thing. They are serving that which they hold above your freedom of choice and your own ability to make your own best decisions. It's crazy. It's crazy that that's the time. And it's also crazy that we have this illusion of freedom. That like there's such a thing as American liberty and that we're somehow exceptional for it. And I don't know that it's true. I don't want to live anywhere else because this is my country. But when somebody tells me you're not a patriot, it's like, you're not hurting my feelings. You can't convince me that that somehow is a bad thing. So I've got a bunch of stories from whether it be our FBI director lying under oath yesterday, the sort of like the game that they're playing by trying to con you into cheering for things that are not worth cheering for. We're going to go down a whole smorgasbord of things to the point where we've got Seb Gorka now in the administration, which in and of itself is a little bit silly. And they're talking about how they're going to use the counterterrorism programs to target left-wing domestic extremism, to include leftists like Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes. And if that's confusing to you and you can't figure out how Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes might be like considered left-wing, you're not alone. So we're going to work through a whole smorgasbord of really ugly stuff that continues to go on. And the sad thing is that we're talking about it. And I don't know that the talking is going to be the solution. And then also one of the reasons why I was late, I was texting Tom Massey, which is a weird part of my life now that people like Tom Massey are in my phone contacts and I get to talk to them if they are so inclined to. And we're going to do an interview sometime later on today. And when we do that, then I will play that for you guys probably in a little segment tomorrow. I got to work around his schedule. It's not going to be on our schedule. So we got that coming up. All right. Before we get into all the stuff we're doing, you guys may have seen things like researchers documenting male fish developing female characteristics across rivers in the United States. Things like birth control pills that go into the wastewater treatment systems and can't be fully filtered out. Yeah, it's the same water that ends up running right back into your home. You may not be worried about this, but pharmaceutical runoff is a thing that my wife has been talking about with me for quite a while. No thanks to all of that, by the way. I don't want that. I don't want that for my boys. I don't want that for my girls. This is why we have Cove Pure. This is why we filter our water. I recommend you guys do the same thing. The taste is obviously a big piece of it, but the health benefits and getting rid of the garbage that our system just wasn't set up to handle. People take medications of all kinds. When their bodies don't absorb it, they urinate it into the water, and then the water just goes out into the toilets into the sewers into the treatment plants. They come right back at you. Yeah, you may want to filter that stuff. I don't know. These plants were not built to catch pharmaceutical compounds. So you've got all kinds of things coming in, whether it be antibiotics or whether it be birth control hormones, whether it be antidepressants and all kinds of other crazy stuff. They come right back in. They come in small doses, but they build up. Your standard water pitcher from the store is not going to cut it. It's not going to get this stuff out. So if you want to filter things down to a much finer level, check out Cove Pure, the Clearwave reverse osmosis technology. That's a mouthful. It does have a certification to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants, including things like PFAs and fluorides and arsenics and leads and all kinds of other stuff that just does not get filtered out otherwise, and they're not interested in trying to do it. So the fish don't have a choice about what kind of water they're living in, but you do have a choice about what kind of water you drink. Covepure.com/KYLE, covepure.com/Kyle. You'll save 250% off the sticker price on there. COVEPURE.com/KYLE. Those are all the symbols and the letters in the order that you need to have them. There's also a link in the show description, which you guys can find. Check it out. Having better tasting water is really one of the most simple things in the world. I don't even like to drink water when I go to people's houses now, unless I know it's being filtered, because I'm that snooty, and you will be too. Sorry, we'll ruin you on water when you actually just taste water the way water was meant to taste. All right, check them out. Support our sponsors. We appreciate all of you guys, and let's get into it starting right now. This is going to be kind of an interesting show. I almost forgot, I really did, that I'm not using my normal ears. And I really wonder, where in the heck did they stop working? What's going on with that? I hate it when my technology, it's probably my little kids. You guys will be happy to know, my 5-year-old, who is he's an unknown celeb of this program. He's now allowed, it's Thursday, he's now allowed to have his tracksuit back. And it's not clean. It's not out of the laundry. So tracksuit update. My 5-year-old boy came down the stairs today, and I decided to goad him because of that diabolical punishment my wife put on him. And I'm like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And he was like, "I'm good." And he was like, I go, "It's Thursday. where's that tracksuit? And he's like, oh, and then he looked like a dog. Like if you ask a dog where their bone is and they're like looking around because they don't know where the bone is either. And then he runs into the laundry room. My wife goes, no, don't go in there. I haven't washed it yet. And he's like, can I just look at it? So he spent like 2 or 3 minutes in the laundry room looking at his freaking tracksuit. So that's the update for those of you who are wondering about the budding Teddy KGB that's in my life. Let's start with some fun stuff from another guy that I thought I was fond of this guy. Somebody asked me on Twitter the other day, they were like, when you say that you know Jim Erdman, do you mean that you know Jim Erdman? Or are you saying you know him like you knew Kash Patel when you were out there promoting Kash Patel? And I was like, damn it. That hits in a way that it ought not to. No, I actually know Jim. I didn't know Kash. I didn't realize what a scumbag he was. I think if I had been honest and I didn't need an ally so badly, I think I probably could have sussed out what we were dealing with here. But this story I thought was great. This story is also breaking news over on MSNBC, and it is not news for those of you that pay attention to what we do here. Not even a little bit. Check this out. Ready? This is coming from Ken Delanian and Carol Leonig. You guys don't have to like them. In fact, you don't have to like them at all. But what you should acknowledge is that they have good sourcing inside the FBI. And why would that be? Oh, because the FBI has a significant number of politically motivated people that are at the senior management levels that have significant experience, and they have also a high level of access to what's happening in the Bureau. And they want business as usual. And business as usual means that the FBI decides what's good for the FBI in the same way that the CIA decides what's good for the CIA. And who cares if you had an election and you thought you were going to get, I don't know, like a new attorney general that was going to do something? No, that's not how this works. The FBI would tell you that they're actually independent of the presidency. We heard from Brian Driscoll the other day that he was actually shocked that there was like this apolitical entity, that he imagined the FBI was apolitical. I think you got to have your eyes closed to think that. But that doesn't mean that people that work there are not apolitical. There's plenty of people that are apolitical, just like in your job. You could go to your job and every day you could find people that don't know anything about politics, don't care anything about politics, and the most contentious thing that they want to discuss is some sort of sports ball team. And that would be like where they would get really passionate. That's fine. That's the case in the job I used to have as well. There's also some people that are really trying to get some outcomes done. And why would that be? Because they work in the counterintelligence sphere. Counterintelligence is inherently political. Counterintelligence is when there is a foreign nation state actor that is working against what they, working for what they believe is good for their country and theoretically could be against what your country wants. And so you're going to somehow angle against them. They may not even be doing things illegally. So you're using information to try to subvert what they're doing to subvert your government's actions, and your government's actions are political. It's full of politics. Acting like it's not is silly. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that do their job and they're like, I'm not political, and therefore nobody is political. And that's just not the case. FBI insiders say Kash Patel is padding the stats to boost his record of arrests. I will tell you this definitively. When the left and the right can both agree on something, one of two things is true. Either we're all about to get screwed, or that thing is inherently true because it's just undeniable. In this case, my argument to you would be that this is inherently true, that he's boosting his stats to look good because he's not competent. He took the same FBI with the same personnel, with 99% of the same types of people there. He took the recruiting classes, which, by the way, takes about 2 years, somewhere between 18 months, 2 years. Some people take longer. We've been in Kash Patel's FBI, if you want to call it that, for about a year and change, which means every single person in the pipeline was recruited, was vetted, and eventually hired while Chris Wray was still the FBI director. Now, there's this guy, and I'm trying to remember, he used to actually work at the FBI. Not for very long, by the way. It was only 292 days. But for those 292 days, he wasn't on a podcast where his podcast used to regularly and loudly proclaim, personnel is policy. And so if your personnel are the same and you think that you've changed the upper end policy, my argument would be that no, you did not do that. And maybe Daniel would know that too. That's why whenever he gets kind of pinned down about certain things, he goes, "Ugh," and he kind of waffles around. We did some incredible changes, but this FBI will totally come after me. And so I'm in danger. My family's in danger. Daniel is not in danger. He was too ineffective while he was at the FBI. Guys like Jim Erdman are in danger as a regular thing. Luckily, he's an absolute freaking stud. He's the kind of person that you thought were working for our intelligence agencies. Just like you thought FBI agents were like Garrett O'Boyle, were like Steve Friend. You thought they were people that had principles, that'd be willing to lose their job and their life over them. And then when given a kind of a push and a shove to find out whether or not they actually held to those principles, they did. They didn't blink. They didn't budge. They said, no, that's not how it's going to be. So what happens when you do that? When you decide to go up against the machine? The machine is big and vast. Not only does the machine have elements of government, so official power, it has elements of the media behind it, which means unofficial power and the power of public messaging and slander. Going up against the machine is a terrifying opportunity. It's a terrifying ask of anybody. And the wild thing is all the people I know that have decided to go and do it, they never thought there was another choice. They never thought it was a negotiable option. So when my buddies were asked to go testify in front of Congress, and we saw Garrett O'Boyle sit up there with the tie that his daughter picked out to give him, courage, I knew that wasn't the most comfortable position for him because I heard his voice. And that's not the Garrett I talk to on the phone every day. And so what did he say? He said, this government will crush you. They will try to crush your family. They will try to crush all the things that you care about. They will go after your friends to hurt you because you've dared to defy their God. You are an apostate to that leftist religion. In a Senate hearing on Tuesday, the FBI director dodged questions about his behavior and his leadership. And instead, he pointed to arrest data that current and former agents say is manipulated. We're going to play a clip of him talking about the FBI's top 10 most wanted. And then you guys are going to remember that we've talked about this quite a bit here. Here is a couple minutes, kind of a montage of him talking and then sort of the breaking of this story by those who wrote it over on MSNBC. Again, if MSNBC is coming to the same conclusions that I am going to show you, I have been sharing since before Kash was the FBI director, you might want to take heed of it. Because there is very little that MSNBC and I are going to agree on for reasons. But data is data. And propaganda is propaganda. And if somebody doesn't like the government today because it's not their government as they try to see it, because quote unquote, their team is not in charge, we can look at it and just say, okay, fine, understood. We understand what you're saying. It doesn't mean it's false just because of the outlet it's coming from. So please put that aside for a second. Listen to what the FBI director is saying, and then we'll go through and I'll prove it to you.
We've arrested 8 of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in the world in 14 months. That's twice as many in the 4 years combined. That is what the men and women of the FBI are doing, well-resourced. Everyone should take a look at this. If people want to continue the baseless, fraudulent, false personal attacks at me, that's great. Keep the target on me, as I've always said, but the mission has never been better.
When it comes to the arrests Kash Patel boasted about yesterday, Patel's FBI has imposed new policies that inflate these numbers and overstate the FBI's progress in stemming crime. That is according to a half dozen law enforcement sources. Kash Patel's lack of transparency is even causing some from inside the FBI to speak out, with one current official telling MS Now this, quote, "They are absolutely padding the stats," and claiming arrests they would not have claimed. Agents inside the Bureau complained frequently about Patel's bogus arrest numbers. Kash is definitely engineering things to pad his stats.
I've been hearing tips for some time that the statistics that Kash Patel sometimes mentioned, they said were juiced or inflated unfairly and intentionally. And while we were working on this, Kash Patel is brought before the Senate to answer questions. And instead of answering those blistering questions, he waves a black placard in the air and says, this is the proof that I'm really running this agency quite well. And this is the FBI under my leadership. We began sort of concretizing our work, re-corroborating, going back to sources. The FBI has begun counting arrests, particularly immigration agents' arrests, whenever FBI agents are present or simply, assisting. The most wanted list, This is supposed to be the 10 people that are the most dangerous villains in the world, and that we've been hunting for them for possibly years. What my colleague Ken Delaney and I found in reviewing those, based on good information from sources, was that 4 of the 8 people that Kash Patel says were arrested from that fugitive list, that most villainous group, 4 were added within a month of actually being captured. And one of them was arrested in an hour and 13 minutes after being put on the list.
I don't know a single person still at the FBI or who has recently left it that has the slightest iota of respect for Kash Patel. He is widely viewed as a clown within the organization, but he's a clown with a flamethrower.
Clown with a flamethrower? No, he's a child with a freaking cobra. So that was Mike Feinberg, and he talks like a gay version of Jesse Ventura, right? He over enunciates things because he thinks like he has a bow tie on without a bow tie, right? You guys can tell. That's not a person that I think is a credible human being. I'm not going to look at that guy and go like, oh yeah, but he's not wrong. Of course he's not thought of seriously. He's not thought of seriously because he's playing with this game called the FBI's Most Wanted Fugitives. It's a creation. It's not real. There's no objective standard that says this person has the most number of points and therefore they have been vaunted to the list and statistically they are the most wanted. How would you decide who the most wanted person is anyway? Would they have to have the most heinous crime for the longest time on the run? Or would it be better if you just nominated someone that you were about to find? So what did they say? Kash Patel's claim, we've caught 8 of the top 10 most wanted people. Most wanted by who? The FBI. Who puts those people on the list? The FBI. So you caught the top 10 of the people that you said were the most important criminal fugitives. Let's go to their list just so you guys know what the FBI's most wanted really is. This is FBI.gov/wanted. No, not the movie where they throw the bullets and the bullets curve around. This is their wanted list. And then they go into the sub-wanted list. Did you know that the most wanted list has multiple most wanteds? So wait, it's not even just 10? No, it's not. Most wanted, this is the 10 most wanted fugitives. And here they are. And interestingly enough, none of them have what I would call like Americanized names. Fausto Isidro Meza Flores, Gianni Vincente Mascaro Serrano, Omar Alexander Cardenas, Ruja Ignovadato. I'm just making some of the. This one's really good. This is it's a Patel. It's one of Kash's relatives. This is Badreshik Kumar Chetan Bai. Hi. This is Trungduklu, right? Okay, so we have one that's captured. Here she is. Kashan Nicola Roper. They found her. She was found in 24 hours after put on the list. So this is the so-called top 10 most wanted. But are those all the most wanted? No, there's an entire page of most wanteds. Here are the most wanted terrorists, not to be confused with the most wanted top 10. I guarantee you find someone here, they will also say this. These are people that will never be found. So here's a bunch of Islamic names. Can't pronounce any of them. Won't even try. They've got really good pictures like this guy. That guy looks like me in a turban, maybe. Could be Gerardo Boyle with a shorter beard. Could be literally anyone. Just absolutely devastatingly bad. Date of birth used, 1966. Place of birth, Saudi Arabia. Whereabouts unknown. No known scars or markers. $5 million if you could find this guy that may or may not be around. He was indicted in 1996, 30 years ago. So don't put him on the top 10 most wanted. You're not going to find him. All right. Do they have other? Oh, yeah, they have other most wanted. Here's some more most wanteds. These are the most wanted crimes against children. So these are going to be your child sex offenders, and they are going to be pornographers, and they're going to be child sex traffickers, and so on. And so you got a bunch of them. These would all be victories if you could find them. Here are violent murderers. The FBI doesn't do murder unless you are unlawfully fleeing to avoid prosecution, what's called UFAP, unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. So that becomes a federal crime. Murder in and of itself, not a federal crime. UFAP tends to be a federal crime, so you can add that. And so we find them, Marshal Service and so on. Here we go. There's a bunch of people here. These are alleged murderers. There's a capture right there in Ricky Vargas. A bunch of foreign-looking names. Does say a lot about America. And the only reason I say that is because, look, these are the people that used to be on the list when they created the list. They're all white guys, including a white guy with a pipe. He's like a chubby white guy with a pipe in his 60s. Okay, so let's do some more most wanted. So now you've got FBI. So this is FBI.gov/wanted/murderers. Or, yeah, murderers. There it is. What about missing children? So these are people who are kidnapping and missing. You got a whole list of most wanted there. Kids and others that have disappeared. There are a lot of them. Oh my God, it just keeps going. Michelle Obama is on this list. That's not Michelle Obama. Sorry. Okay. There's a lot. It just keeps going. Oh, it keeps refreshing. If you keep scrolling down, there's just unlimited amounts of people that are missing. That says something good. How about criminal enterprise investigation or organized crime? This would usually be things like gangs. This could be the mob. There it is, criminal investigation. So here's your mob and or gang type stuff going on. These are my favorite. This is the best one. How about China-based drug conspiracy #1? And the picture is the FBI's logo, and then here's a couple people that are based in China, so they'll never get them. So that's a most wanted. This goes down forever, too. There's a bunch of people on this. There's pages and pages, 57 different people on this most wanted. You guys get the point? You get on. How about white-collar crimes? Here's a bunch of white-collar crimes. My point to you is that the most wanted is just a bunch of people that they're looking for. And there's hundreds that I've just showed you as of right now. That's how many are on the most wanted list. It's not like, oh, there are 10 people, and these are the 10 most important fugitives to our entire FBI, and we're all working on them, and we want to find them. No, it's like, how do we promote ourselves in a way that would be really, really valuable to the public so we can go out and brag in front of a congressional hearing? Almost like I said in February of 2025. Kash Patel was sworn in on February 20th. This is February the 4th. This is 3 weeks prior to Kash Patel moving into that office. The FBI's top 10 most wanted list is a marketing ploy. I'm quoting myself. The FBI will add someone just caught to the list to make sure that that number in red lights up. What number are we talking about? The number here on the screen. This is Brian Driscoll, who I showed you yesterday. Brian Driscoll has a good reputation, but he hasn't been a case agent in a long time. He was a full-time tactical operator at HRT, and then he was a manager. Nothing against the guy for who he is, but that's how you get into that position. So they put out this like weird video where he stood in front of the top 10 most wanted, and they told you that under the Trump administration, they were going to use this marketing ploy at a higher level than they had previously under Biden. Who made that decision? Was it Kash Patel who made that decision? No, it was the FBI that made this decision. This is what we're going to highlight. Because the FBI looks good under Donald Trump if we go after law and order and we catch uber bad guys. We go to the top 10 bad guys. So let's put our dude in front of the wall and have him talk and try to make that red number light up. Here he was talking in February.
I'm Brian Driscoll, and it's my honor to be representing the men and women of the FBI as acting director. I want to take a few minutes to share with you some of the important work these men and women have been doing across the country and around the world every day to keep the American people safe. I'll start with our top 10 list. The 10 most wanted fugitives list has been helping the FBI apprehend dangerous criminals for 75 years. In that time, we've located or arrested nearly 500 fugitives on the list, including 2 just the past week. Donald Eugene Fields II, who was arrested in Florida on charges of child sex trafficking and child rape, and Arnaldo Jimenez, who was taken into custody in Mexico on murder charges. I'm grateful to both of these case teams for their work and to our partners for their support in bringing these violent criminals to justice. You've heard the FBI always gets its man, but our work is never done. Today, we're announcing the addition of Fausto Isidro Mesa Flores to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list.
All right, so we're going to announce the people that we think we're going to get. By the way, to go get a provisional arrest warrant out of Mexico usually takes anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. So there you have it. This is me talking about Kash Patel's FBI, if you want to believe that's such a thing. This was in March of 2025. Unfortunately, the FBI's top 10 most wanted is a propaganda tool. Oh, weird. I wonder if MSNBC was reading my stuff. They could have for literally the last year. Criminals who have already been found are added to it before the FBI comes to get them. And then they can pat themselves on the back. This MS-13 guy was added in February of 2025 in anticipation of an arrest. The other people that they mentioned were accidents that were found by local cops doing what local cops do, encounter the public and run them for warrants. Nothing indicates that the FBI has made a dramatic change in 30 days, but that's what we were being sold. So who are we talking about in this case? Oh, we're talking about a high-ranking MS-13 guy. He was arraigned in March of 2025. The fact of the matter is, it takes a long time to get somebody into one of these spaces. Here's another one. This shows that Kash Patel is totally serious, says Nicole Parker, a.k.a. FBI Barbie. FBI Barbie is a Fox News voice. Does she know anything about the FBI? Not really, no. But she's got blonde hair, so she's on Fox. Here's what I highlighted. Earlier this month, the police identified and detained Justin Smith, who was not on the top 10 most wanted, but is on the FBI's most wanted list in general, one of those hundreds of people that I showed you. What a great victory. Okay. And then you have this one, captured, FBI top 10 most wanted fugitive. This is someone who on the morning of January 25th, again, so this was 5 days into Donald Trump's presidency and not by the FBI before FBI Director Kash Patel got there. The Lady Lake Police Department arrested Fields after a routine traffic stop because the license plate wasn't registered. And they got Eugene Fields II. He was added to the fugitive list when? In May of 2023. Child sex trafficking, child rape. I'm sure he's a really, really bad guy. The fact is that local police accidentally encountered him and then they got him. So celebrating that the FBI is doing amazing stuff because of that is nonsense, because that's not what's happening here. He went on Trey Gowdy's immediately within a month of being FBI director and talked about it.
There is no corner on this earth we will not chase down a violent criminal, and there is no sector of the public we will not root out corruption and make sure the American people know what has happened, because that's what they deserve. There is no place that we will not find you. It's just not going to be us that actually finds you. It's actually going to be the cops who do it, because the cops do that every day. You guys can dislike police officers. I think it's unfair to say that broadly, because the majority of cops that I've met, and I've probably met as many cops as anybody, as an agent, when I was in the military, as just a regular guy walking around, most cops sign up for the right reason. The one that we remember are the crappy cops, obviously. If you remember somebody that has a power trip or that is a complete jerk or shouldn't be there in the first place, most of the cops that I've met, I have interactions like I did with that guy in the desert that I showed you the other day, which ended up resulting in me not working for the FBI. But that guy wasn't a bad guy, even if he did stuff that I think is kind of like, iffy. Did he go out there and ask me to do something that he didn't have the legal authority to ask me? Yeah. Did he ask me politely, and did he say that it was an order? No. Did I feel like I could refuse it? I did. Maybe you wouldn't. But at the end of the day, most cops are not there for the wrong reason. I'll say most. There's still a ton of them that are. Here's the problem. Those cops are out there doing their job. And this guy's out there taking credit for it. What is this? Oh, this is yet another post by me. This is in January of this year. So we've been doing this for well over a year and a half at this point. And by the way, I did interviews where I talked about the top 10 most wanted and discussed it about how Chris Wray was a liar. The FBI just is a publicity machine. This goes all the way back to J. Edgar Hoover. This is the reason why the FBI gave access to certain media studios and to movie studios to make these TV shows and to make movies that highlighted how awesome the FBI is, when even though that's not what the FBI is like, because it's good for PR. Thanks to Donald Trump. This is my sarcastic post, obviously. Thanks to Donald Trump for telling Kash Patel and Pam Bondi to do something, because they're sort of doing it. Oh, wait, the FBI's top 10 most wanted is a marketing tool and not an objective measure of law enforcement accomplishment. Yes, I've said this in interviews when Ray was a boss. And what is he saying? He's knob slobbing, and he's saying, we caught this guy, Ryan James Wedding. We caught him because nobody can run from us. Okay, bro, I'm just going to show you a couple others just because they're there, that you can actually go to my timeline on X and you can search most wanted.
And then you'll find that I've been talking about this for well over a year before Kash got in. Steve Friend pointed it out too. The FBI director hopes you don't realize that he added this guy to the top 10 list 73 minutes before they arrested him. Forget about a 1 day before, which is what MS Now pointed out. Seriously, 73 minutes before they went and arrested this guy. Is that because people were so compelled because they watched the FBI's most wanted list and they're over here going click, 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 and they're doing refreshes on it like they're trying to win a sweepstakes or buy a concert ticket? No, nobody's doing that. Nobody's getting updates on when the FBI adds something. Kash Patel's a scam artist who's thirsty for POTUS's attention. Fact check true. Steve Friend. You wonder why Steve Friend doesn't work there anymore. That's why. You'll notice that there's a concentrated effort now to discredit Steve and Garrett O'Boyle, in the same way that there's an effort to discredit Jim Erdman, which we'll cover in a second, CIA whistleblower. I see similar things going on, trying to discredit Tom Massey. And I got to tell you, watching all that stuff, and it does feel pretty impotent, because even though I've got a podcast, and even though I'm talking to you, and you're listening, and you're out there, and you're not nobody, it's really frustrating because we don't have the ability to affect any change. I see people lie about people that I really like, that I know for a fact are good people, that I've dealt with in a private capacity, and I feel quite solid on my assessment. And then I see liars doing lying things. I can't do anything about it. It's just out there. This is the story. This is another MS Now piece. So let's go from one that I agree with to one that I think is terrible. And this is one that's terrible. And it's written by none other than Jahan. There's an apostrophe in there, illogically. Jones. Jahan Jones. We'll get into this story in 2 seconds, or 20 seconds. Let's call it this. Rumble, if you're watching, give us a like. I'd appreciate it. Bumps us up on the leaderboard. Whether we need it or not, I have no idea. But I appreciate you guys interacting with it. At least it shows us that we have real people watching and not whatever weird Rumble bots that Daniel Bongino pays to go on. I didn't say that. That's not true. That's an allegation. That can't be right. YouTube, guys, you guys are great. Thanks for being here. Make sure you guys like the channel. Make sure you subscribe to it if you have not already. We've grown dramatically over the last 12 months or so. We went from having nobody listening on YouTube to having hundreds every day, sometimes as many as like almost 1,000. So that's very cool. For me, it's cool to watch it kind of grow there, especially because I think we were suppressed for a long time. And then if you're listening on the audio platforms, I haven't forgot about you folks on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. Consider joining us on Spotify where the video is too. And you can see the cool revolvers that are sitting behind me. You may hear an ad on the audio platforms at this point. There. I have to remember sometimes to just leave that dead airspace. All right. Raskin wants answers from Todd Blanche about the alleged payment of fired FBI agents. Yesterday, I read you the letter. I pointed out that basically the beginning of every single one of the allegations that Jamie Raskin's letter makes about each of the so-called agents, many of whom are not actually agents, and I know them personally. They're not agents. They're support employees. They may not be there anymore. They talk about millions of dollars in payments. They're talking about on the aggregate against 10 people. These guys got paid back pay for something that was supposed to be done because what was done to them is wrong. If they end up paying me for my career, it's millions for just me. I don't think I'll ever get it, to be fair. Just so we're on the same page here, I would love it if that was the case. I would love it if I actually saw the justice where I did my job, I reported malfeasance and wrongdoing the same way that Jim Erdman, CIA whistleblower, does. And then what happens next? They get rid of you on some BS charges because you were out talking to a cop in the desert and the cop didn't even write a report about it. There's no citation issued, and that's enough for them to do it. I had a chat with a whistleblower attorney yesterday, retired FBI agent, Kurt Susdak. And when we were exchanging messages, one of his messages says, it's very interesting. Whenever the government gets involved in a negotiation with somebody that they've accused of wrongdoing and they know that they're in the wrong, they suddenly find new allegations against that person. So I will be shocked if there are not additional points that come out against Jim Erdman. He's now in the spin cycle. He's in the wash machine. And having been through it and having seen my friends go through it, I don't much care to watch it happen to a friend. The upside is he's a very durable human being. He's a super competent and capable person. Like I said, he's the kind of person that I hoped worked at the CIA. But you can pretty much set your watch by the fact the government smears will come in. And that's what this story is from Jahan Jones. I'm only saying it that way because his name is spelled J-A-H-A-N. Jahan. In any case, the Maryland Democrat is investigating alleged payments to fired and disciplined FBI agents that he says amount to millions of taxpayer dollars. I read the story, and what I found was zero reference to the monies paid out to Peter Strzok, to Lisa Page, to people that were paid out under the previous administration. How about guys like Kevin Kleinsmith, who were fired from their job? And then what happened to them? Oh, they got their bar license reinstated after a very short period of time, even though they did something unforgivable. They lied to the fisc in a way that 180 degrees changed the meaning of an email, and they used that as evidence of someone's malfeasance or someone's criminal activity. That seems kind of problematic. This was the whole thing about Carter Page. And then here they are in this story crying about money being paid to Carter Page, who was legitimately wronged by the FBI. Andy McCabe was fired from the FBI for lying while doing political stuff. There is no one that is more political, in my opinion, than maybe the deputy director job. Political in the sense that it represents bureau politics, rises up through the entirety of the ranks, spends decades in the agency, being formed by the agency, putting their hand up whenever they're like, hey, who would be the person that could lead this? I would do that, sir. I would be in charge. You guys ever work with the people? I love the idea of like reluctant leadership, kind of servant leadership. This is, amusingly enough, it's well demonstrated in the movie Starship Troopers, where the guy, Rico, who's kind of the hero, even though he has kind of a gay voice, Rico, who's this charming, attractive, good-looking guy with kind of a little whistly voice. And then he goes, and they go like, I need a lieutenant. And he says, you're it until you die or I find someone better. That's a great way of looking at it. I actually said almost the exact same thing to my boss, who was also an HRT guy, who knew Brian Driscoll. Came out of HRT, was my boss, and he said, I want you to be one of my team leaders. And I said, okay, good. Don't act like you're doing me a favor. I don't want this position. I don't want to be in charge. I don't want to lead anyone. I'm the most junior guy here, and by right, someone else should be doing it. However, I also want this to be led correctly, and so I am willing to do so until you find someone better. That's it. Replace me the minute you can with someone who has a better skill set or is more appropriate or more senior and wants to do it. Please, let's do that game. And he was like, okay. And he was taken aback because he was like, I'm doing you the favor. I'm advancing your career. It's like, dude, I don't want my career advanced. I don't want to play this game with you. I'm not pretending like this is a thing that I like. The people that did want that thing, that aspired, like, oh, pick me. I'll go do it. I think I should be a supervisor. I've been working cases for 4.5 years. Meanwhile, I think I should supervise people who've been doing it for 20. I'd be the right person to interact with management. Yuck. Reluctant leadership was the best. The people that only wanted to stay close to the work, they were the best. They were the ones that were like, oh, I need a little bit more money because of what's going on. I got kids going to college, so I'm willing to take a promotion, but I want to stay close to the mission of the job, and I don't want to promote out of the first line supervisor. I want to supervise the people that are doing the mission of this agency. Those people were great. That's not what the deputy director is. The deputy director is like, I think I should be in charge of this whole thing. Kind of like a kid that was in your high school class that thought he should be student body class president. That guy was always kind of a nerd, wasn't he? I mean, it wasn't like the kind of person that you thought, like, I would like that person to make all the decisions for me. They were just the kind of person that said that they would be willing to do it, and everybody kind of went like, oh, okay, that guy's willing to run a campaign, I guess. Good thing student body president doesn't actually have much authority. It turns out deputy director of the FBI has access to things called prohibited access files and might decide to run a honeypot operation against the current sitting president of the United States of America. That could be kind of scary. Imagine having that power. That's a great quote. Big White Dog in our chat just now wrote, a man with no ambition cannot be bought. I don't even know that it's about ambition. It's a man that has the humility to think that he's not the one that should lead and is kind of reluctantly pushed into it. We were kind of always told that was kind of like what Lincoln was about. I don't think that's probably true because I don't think you end up president on accident. But that kind of humility, maybe the George Washington ethos, where it's like, I don't want to be a king. You offer it to me and I turn it down because I believe in this other idea. That's not the kind of people that we have that run to the top of our government, it turns out. It really is awfully sad. So let me go to another story here that's going to make us all kind of puke. We're in a moment when maybe some of the most important lies over the last 5-6 years are actually being revealed. And they're not being revealed in mainstream media. Shocker. And they are not being revealed in a way that is getting a lot of attention. In fact, everything is being done possible to hide them, to discredit them. And that's why you should be paying attention to alternative sources of media. Many of you already know that. You're listening to me. So if you're listening to me, you're listening to an alternative media. I sure as heck am not Fox. I sure as heck am not MS Now. If those guys are on the sides, what are in the middle? I don't know, Blaze and, CBS and ABC and NBC and Midas Touch and what else is out there? There's a bunch of these like network things, the Glenn Beck types. Everybody's taking their marching orders. The bigger you get, the more likely it is that you got there because somebody decided to float you up. You were willing to take on editorial bias. I'm trying to find the right way of saying that. One of the things that was really critical when I started my first couple shows and the partnership that we did with Catholic Vote, which was overt, by the way. They gave me money to keep my family afloat, and we did content that they had access to. I told them they could have the entire show. They could do anything they wanted. The one thing that I wasn't willing to do was cede editorial control. They couldn't tell me what to say and what not to say. And when I said something that was a little bit on the edge, sometimes I would call up Brian Birch, who's now the ambassador to the Holy See for Donald Trump. And I would let him know. I'd be like, hey, just so you know, I got a little bit hot the other day. And I said this. I just want you to know, since your name is associated with mine now. I'm not asking you for permission. I'm just giving you opportunities. And if you need to walk away, then you need to walk away. That's okay. This is Steve Baker's website, which, by the way, was undergoing a significant and aggressive third in a row denial of service attack for the most of the time that it was up yesterday. This story posted yesterday, and it should be wild and like nationwide news. Veritas Regnant, byline. Capitol Police engaged in an intentional and malicious January 6th conspiracy to create a disaster and sack or fire Chief Stephen Son, whistleblower says. I've known about this for months. There's a lot of stuff that I have in the background that I know they can't print yet because people won't go on record because it'll turn somebody upside down. Maybe you guys saw an interview with Steve yesterday with Viva Frei. I always get that wrong, by the way, and I should apologize. I wish David would just go by his name, then it'd be easier. This is a wild story, and it is being published by a tiny independent group, two guys that got fired and resigned from Blaze, where they would have had at least a little bit of access to the mainstream, and that's why they don't have access to the mainstream, and that's why they didn't get the story out that way. Now, many of you are going, well, yeah, of course January 6th was a conspiracy. Of course is one thing. It's one thing for you to believe something to be the case. It's quite another to find someone on record that's in a position to know or has the, let's say, text messages that substantiate it. So let's go through this story real quickly, because it's critical that this gets louder than it is. And sadly, I'm not the voice that's going to be able to amplify it as big as it should be. Elements of the United States Capitol Police knew in advance that January 6th would be a catastrophe that would justify and lead to the firing of Capitol Police Chief Stephen A. Sund. A whistleblower has alleged an explosive letter to Congress. The sad thing is it's not an explosive letter to the FBI that will result in anything. We're in an era when we're going to expose things, but we're not going to see any accountability. And the transparency is not coming from our government, despite their claims that this is the most transparent organization ever. It's not. Transparency is a nonsense word. So, a whistleblower report references the first concrete evidence. This is the words that you are looking for. First concrete evidence that January 6th was, on some levels, a planned disaster with the goal of sacking Chief Sund, elevating then Assistant Chief Yogananda D. Pittman, 52, and Deputy Chief Sean P. Gallagher, 45, and consolidating the United States Capitol Police Intelligence Division under Democrat control. That's a pretty broad statement. There's a lot in there. Getting rid of the person that seems to have scruples and seems to be a principled person, and that's been my experience with Chief Sund. We've had off-the-record conversations. He strikes me as a pretty straightforward law enforcement guy. Probably believes in the machine more than I do, but I don't think he's a nefarious actor. That was just my impression of him. And then there's people that are doing intelligence work. They're always suspect because intelligence work is inherently political, especially when you have dirt on people who are in politics. You can actually wield real power. That was the entire claim behind the Epstein tapes, and the idea that people were going to be able to manipulate people based on what their behavior had been because someone had seen something in private that wasn't meant for public consumption. Evidence reveals that the violence, death, injuries, and aftermath of January 6 were not the result of mere intelligence failures or incompetence, the whistleblower wrote, but may have stemmed from intentional acts by insiders seeking to remove then Chief of Police Stephen Sund and consolidate control of the U.S. Capitol Police and its intelligence functions. It's not an accident that the intelligence functions aren't called out by name. Intelligence functions, intelligence agencies, they are antithetical to American liberty, it turns out. The whistleblower letter was written by a senior law enforcement official with firsthand knowledge of the events in the department prior to, on, and after January 6th, alleged that the senior Capitol Police leaders conspired with Democrats in Congress to create conditions that allowed the January 6th disaster and then immediately resulted in the firing of Sund. It shows that there's some coordination and some consultation taking place in advance, Sund told the Veritas Regnit in an interview. Think about it. About 48 hours after this text is sent, Yogananda Pittman, she is given my job. What is that new evidence? Here's the letter that goes to Speaker Mike Johnson, Senator Chuck Grassley, Senator Ron Johnson, Barry Loudermilk, and Congressman Troy Niels. This letter was dated April the 6th. So that's over a month ago. And they had to sit on this. This core new piece of evidence I highlight is a message allegedly sent on the morning of January 6, 2021. This is specifically by someone called Sergeant Larry Cook, who is currently the Assistant Sergeant at Arms to that House of Representatives, to Deputy Chief Sean Gallagher. As I understand it, the message states that Yogananda Pittman was, quote, excited about taking over for Sund today. I further report that this message and a related exchange were in the possession of the House committee that was being blocked from adjudicating this during an official investigation. Do you guys remember that one of the things that Massey has pointed out, Thomas Massey, the congressman, Steve Baker, the investigative journalist, and people who were looking into this story, was that the Capitol Police were off limits and they were so obviously involved in some way in January 6th? Remember, they found the pipe bomb number 2 in moments and then stopped looking for more. The number of connections to Capitol Police and the fact that they were inextricably involved in this story, significant. And then we watched the personnel shifts. And I've kind of alluded to it previously. So let's just get into the kind of quick, nitty gritty of it. The guy that was working on behalf of Thomas Massey as his pipe bomb investigator ended up as the Congressional Affairs Liaison for the FBI. So went to the FBI and then was facing Congress, left Congress to face Congress from the FBI. So now you have one stopgap put in. The person that found the pipe bomb was moved into a liaison position where he was now the one looking at the FBI and was the liaison between Capitol Police and FBI. The person that supervised him on that day, the team leader from the ATF, a different agency altogether, took over the counter-surveillance team mission and was the supervisor of that, left ATF and went to U.S. Capitol Police, left different branches of government. This is not very common, it turns out, to go from the executive branch at ATF DOJ to now being in charge of something inside U.S. Capitol Police. I don't know anyone that's made that move. I don't know a single person that's done that. And then Yogananda Pittman slowly moved out and went away and was replaced by that guy. We have people that were quietly moved into place, and it wasn't a lot of them, but they were moved into critical places to stop information flow. And notice it was information flow that they were interested in. The jobs that these people went, they went to specifically liaison positions. Liaisons are the ones that decide, hey, I work at this agency, I work at the FBI, and I get to tell you, Congress, what I'm going to give you. Liaison. I work at U.S. Capitol Police. Oh, you're at the FBI? You'd like some information? Unfortunately, I can't give that. That's under protection from our agency. I can only give you this. Liaison. Information block. Isn't that a fun game? Guys, you can, this will be linked in the comments on YouTube. It'll be linked in the comments on Rumble. You should read this article. I put links to every article that I refer to every day on those two places. If you find, they're also on Locals, so you can find it on Locals. That's kyleseraphin.com. Okay, this guy has an unpronounceable name. And he's the chairman of the United States Capitol Police Labor Committee. His name is Gus Papathaniasio. I think I got that close. He represents 1,300 officers, said the new whistleblower disclosures demand action by Congress to hold the guilty accountable. Quote, sounds to me like they planned on stabbing Sund in the back and kicking him to the curb. If true, they should all be held accountable. Officers and civilians died on that day and after January 6th. More than 100 officers were injured as a result of Yogananda Pittman and Sean Gallagher's failure on January 6th, and they were never held accountable for their incompetence. The information in question is a text message that allegedly says something to the effect of they're not going to have to worry about Chief Sund being in that position, and that was on the morning of before January 6th kicked off, insinuating they knew that he was going to be looked at as a failure by the end of the day, and that Yogananda Pittman would be taking his job. And then, of course, that did, in fact, come to pass. So it turns out if you post something in a message or a chat that is part of the government system, theoretically, that should still be available. The problem is that the House, and that includes Speaker Mike Johnson, has not been interested in sharing information, has not been interested in looking into it. And we've been told guys like Jim Jordan as well, they're blocking the ability of investigators to look at records for the U.S. Capitol Police. It's like you can look at anything you want when it comes to January 6th. You can evaluate anything you like. You should leave no stone unturned, except these stones over here. These stones are ours. These are the stones that show that we did a bunch of evil stuff. These are the people who do our protective details. So they've seen us drunk and with underage girls, or hanging out with a man when we're supposedly a heterosexual male and married, and all the other weird stuff that our Congress people have gotten into. These are the people that saw the reason why we have a slush fund that have paid off all the people that we've had allegations, some credible and some not credible. Can't look under that. Please stay away from those things, okay? That's not what we're about. We're a group of people that are interested in the truth as long as the truth comports with the official narrative, which is, by the way, why you're going to find out the name of my friend Steve Baker's website. Truth is king. The truth reigns. That's what should be the case. If you don't care about the personalities of it, if you can just zoom in and say, I only care about the things that are accurate, and let the chips fall where they may. Balls and strikes, as my buddy Mark Naughton likes to say. That would be fine. Primary evidence is foreknowledge. It's a phone message allegedly sent by Lawrence Cook to his superiors. I wonder if they have the exact quote on here, or if they don't have the quote of the message. I've heard it quoted a couple different times. There's Sean Gallagher. He's now retired. Interestingly enough, all the people that were involved in these things, they've all stepped off now. So they've accomplished their mission. And it does look like the stuff we're talking about here was a concerted effort from intelligence agencies, from law enforcement, stuff coming out of Congress. So that's the legislative branch, stuff coming out of the executive, because deep government doesn't really mind. It kind of all blurs at that point. It involves the concerted effort to keep Americans quiet. There was a censorship regime. Some of you guys may remember this under Biden. They were things you couldn't talk about. My own father was on a tiny little radio show that they did a YouTube video of. And his tiny little radio show made some claims about whether or not we should be masking children and whether or not we should be testing them for COVID all the time. And that was enough to get kicked off YouTube with literally hundreds of views. If you guys know anything about YouTube views, hundreds of views is not going to be enough to move the needle. Thousands of views are not enough to move the needle. When you get into the tens and hundreds of thousands of views, you start making an impact somewhere. And even that, many of you have never seen quote unquote viral videos that got a couple 100,000 views on X or on Facebook or on Instagram. I see stuff all the time and I'm like, it has 1 million likes. 1 million people saw this and thought it was good. And I've never seen it before. And it was done a year or two ago. It shows you how scared these people are of just a minute amount of accurate information that is not a proved narrative. And so we're getting to where we're going to talk about a CIA whistleblower. Also, there's something highly rich about this story. That we talked about the FBI guys that were getting targeted by that letter. This is the second follow-up story on that. Jamie Raskin, who 5 seconds ago was wearing a bandana like a Crip. Allegedly, he had cancer. Apparently, he beat it. Democrats preview a possible House majority with Jamie Raskin's new anti-corruption pitch, targeting the self-enrichment by Donald Trump and future presidents. You know what the screwed up thing is? They're right. Did we talk to you guys about Trump phones the other day? I think we did. The fact that there was this big push. They were going to make these phones, and they scammed basically like $59 million out of supporters of Donald Trump. I have the release information about the Trump phone. It's one of many different sort of like self-enrichment projects. They're not wrong about this stuff. It's just the problem is they all do this stuff. All of them do this. They're all involved in this garbage. Here's the exciting announcement in the wake of an absolute PR disaster, scamming $59 to $60 million out of your supporters. It's not a great look. So here's the announcement about the new Trump phone. And the amazing thing is, for that $500 that you're going to pay for the Trump phone that you're $100 on the hook for, this phone, per all the AI analysis of the imagery and the layout and the format of the machine, it's a rebranded $200 Chinese-produced phone that was allegedly going to be made in America for $500. Almost like we have a guy in office who promised a bunch of things and then delivered us not that at all. Like lower energy costs and no new wars and deporting all the illegal aliens that were here. Here's the Trump phones. Guys, feel free to sign up if you're excited about getting one of these things. They'll cost you $500. They're goldish and they're made of pure, solid, highest grade Chinesium per the reports.
Introducing the new T1 phone from Trump Mobile, a powerful device designed for performance, reliability, and real American value. Built with premium materials and a sleek modern design, the T1 delivers the speed and responsiveness you expect from a flagship smartphone without the flagship price. Engineered to keep up with your day, the T1 delivers dependable performance whether you're streaming, navigating, working, or staying connected with family and friends, giving you the confidence of a phone that's ready whenever you need it. The brilliant display makes streaming, browsing, and staying connected feel smooth and effortless. Unlike many modern flagship devices, the T1 includes a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, allowing users to utilize their existing audio equipment.
Yes.
Capture sharp photos, clear video, and the moments that matter most with a
Hold on. Guys, we have to interrupt this advertisement for Trumpity Trump phones and let you know that they're bringing back the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Boomers, we got you covered. Don't you worry about Bluetooth. I know you can't get your Bluetooth to work. That's right. We know that. We're going to make it wired again. I do like an audio jack, don't I? Yeah, I do. It might be a good idea. Oh, it turns out you can also still buy this for $169. No big deal.
Camera system designed for everyday life. Right out of the box, the T1 phone includes a charging cable, charging block, and a clear protective case, giving you a few useful essentials right from the start.
And a $300 markup on a $200 retail phone. Here it is. Is this a new phone or is it designed and rebranded? Oh, it's rebranded or reskinned. It's customized with gold paint. The Trump Mobile T1 device has been widely identified by analysts, tech sites, and Wikipedia as a customized version of T-Mobile's Rev 7 Pro 5G phone made by Chinese manufacturer Wingtech under the name Luxshare. It's a mid-range Android phone. You weirdos that use the Android, sold for about $169 to $200 unlocked, or you can buy it at T-Mobile's website. Made in America, as long as you believe that America is Chinese. It's made in Chinese. The finest Chinesium, though, if there was ever going to be Chinesium. All right, well, it kind of puts a little bit of a damper on how good this summit that's going on overseas. You guys may not know this, but our president has decided to go to have the greatest summit. Some people are saying it's the most important summit. Other people have said it's the greatest summit. Some people have said it's the greatest, most important summit. It might be the most exciting summit in the history. That's why his voice is so excited. Also, the manufacturer of our phones is based here where the summit is. Donald Trump is sitting next to flowers. He doesn't look thrilled about this. Here he is, game face. At least he's taking it seriously, since this is our biggest geopolitical adversary.
So I really look very much forward to our discussion. It's a big discussion. There are those that say this is maybe the biggest summit ever.
Ever.
They can never remember anything like it. I can say in the United States, people aren't talking about anything else. But it's an honor to be with you.
Wait, what? Nobody's talking about anything else? Guys, are we talking about anything? Nobody's talking about anything else except the summit. We've literally spent the last hour talking about something else. Weird. A lot of people are talking about the fact that you said you didn't care about whether or not they were going to have any money and whether their financial considerations were going to be taken into play. People are actually talking about the biggest summit ever. Almost not at all. In fact, I actually think adding a 3.5 millimeter jack to your phone is potentially more interesting than your summit at this point. Maybe that's why this happened.
Breaking just moments ago, a new brutal report on wholesale inflation. Way worse than expected. You can see that's the month-to-month increase at 1.4%. That was much more than was expected on an annualized basis. It's at 6%. Jesus. This after consumer inflation just surged to the highest level in 3 years, with us now CNN chief data analyst Harry Etten. So we've been talking about inflation. We've been talking about the president's approval on it, which is not good. Our new poll shows that people are very unhappy with the economy, with inflation, with this handling of inflation. On a historical perspective, though, how much don't they like how he's handling inflation?
These are the ugliest numbers I have ever seen on inflation. And it's not just one poll, Johnny Berman. It's many polls. Just take a look here. President's net approval on inflation. The 5 worst polls ever for any president. They all belong to Donald John Trump, and they have all occurred in the last month. The CNN poll, one of them, 48 points below water on the net approval rating. So what we're talking about here is the worst numbers ever in multiple polls now belong to the president of the United States, Donald Trump. It is a record, simply put, you do not want to have.
The 5 worst polls ever.
5 worst polls ever.
Joe Biden's not in there?
Joe Biden's
Jimmy Carter's not in there?
Jimmy Carter's not in there.
All Donald Trump?
All Donald Trump. The 5 worst ever belong to this gentleman on this side of the screen.
All right. So to what extent are...
They're so excited. Do you remember, it was like 19 seconds ago that Donald J. Trump, the president of the United States, was touting how CNN says 100% of the 100% of Trump supporters support Trump. Have you ever seen such a thing? You'll never see it before and never again. The greatest summit of all the Trump supporters love Trump. I mean, yeah, those guys are seriously irritating. Those numbers sound accurate. Why do they sound accurate? Maybe because he made 20 promises to the American people and he didn't keep them. He kept like 2 of them. That's a failing grade. I don't care what kind of new math you look at. I don't care if they grade you in California and they dropped an A to include 84% and up. It don't make a difference. You can't make 5 promises and then not keep 4 of them. That seems like a real problem. Just because you sealed the border and we know that you didn't get anything in legislation, so that means that you're not actually getting the political party that you're theoretically the head of to do the work in the Senate and the House to actually codify any of it. It means it gets flipped on the next election. And people are like, oh, man, what a wasted opportunity. I don't think people are saying you suck because you made bad promises and we don't like what you promised. I think they're saying you suck because you said you were going to do stuff and you didn't do those things. This is a classic Trump move, though, is it not? This is so on brand for Donald Trump. Overpromise, underdeliver, tell the person who got the underdelivery it's their own fault and that they're the dumb one. I'm going to make you an all-American, gold-colored, $500 smartphone. I'm going to give you a gold-painted Chinesium $200 phone and tell you that you love it. And you're like, this seems like a little bit more money than I would have normally paid for this piece of garbage. And they're like, that's probably because you have really bad taste. You're probably low IQ or low testosterone. It's probably your fault. If I was going to guess whose fault it was, it must be you. Maybe we could get someone like, I don't know, uber testosterone man, Seb Gorka, who talks to us in an accent that is certainly not American. Gorka is really one of the most disappointing people in this administration because he always seemed like he was kind of a bro. I mean, I knew he was kind of a blowhard. Everyone kind of knew that. But he was a nice blowhard. And he seemed like he was the kind of guy that liked things that regular guys do, like guns and ammo and optics. He used to be part of our intro role. You guys may remember that. I was on Gorka's show all the time. And he would text me like funny stuff. Nice stuff. He agreed to be on our board of the Suspendable Support Foundation. He was going to help us like raise money for whistleblowers. And then wrote something and said, "I'm so disappointed, Seraphin. I thought that you were a patriot." It's like, fuck you, Seb. Like, are you serious? Low T people are the problem.
I had, sadly, a putative conservative journalist today from the Daily Caller ask me an asinine question. He said, how is the operation against Iran not another forever war? The idea, I mean, you just have to be either low T or you have to be mentally challenged to compare decades of forever wars with thousands of American casualties to the pinpoint accuracy of what we're doing in Operation Epic Fury with no boots on the ground.
The idea that you would use the words boots on the ground, which sounds like one of the most masculine things you could say in the faggiest voice possible, is quite impressive. It's not rivaled by many people, low T otherwise. I put the chat up because my mother actually told me that my mouth was getting me in trouble. This is a family show. Not because we're like appropriate for all ages of the family, but because literally my family sits in the chat with us on Rumble. Do you guys know that? That's what goes on here. That's my life. I went from working in the FBI, standing on my own 2 feet, living in a beautiful house. I just found the survey from my house, by the way, when I was working for the Bureau. The last time that I had like a real job. And I have the survey of my home and the property that we owned. And it's kind of like I should frame that as a reminder of what was taken. And then I got to sell all that. Then I got to go live with my folks in their house, which was a 3-bedroom house. And I brought 5 extra people to live in their 3-bedroom house. And we filled up their living room, and we filled up their bonus room, and we filled up the 2 bedrooms. And we just put like a little baby in there that was wandering around doing stuff and, you know, not sleeping through the night. And we put my 2 daughters there, and my wife and I were stuck in there. And it's just, it was so suboptimal, but that's why this show is what it is. Like it came from an RV that I bought that I didn't even know I didn't want it. I literally bought an RV that I didn't want. This is why I'm looking at James Erdman and going like, dude, I hope it's going to be better for you. I know he's already in family difficulty. He's been dealing with it for literally years now. You guys don't know his name, but I do. And I know what he's been going through. We bought an RV, I plugged an extension cord into it, and I launched a podcast, which basically is, there's no money in a podcast ever for normal people. It just doesn't happen unless God smiles upon you, or unless you're Benny Johnson and you have no scruples. That's one way to do it too. You can also make money that, or if you say the approved narrative, which is the same thing as what I just said about Benny Johnson. I want to talk about something that's been out there because I think it's really important. And since I'm going to be talking to Massey later on today, I'm sure we'll talk about this briefly. I don't think it's worth a ton of our time, but we're working our way up to the CIA whistleblower thing. I promise you. Like, I just have to get through the stuff. There's a bunch of it. Guys, like on Rumble, like on YouTube, subscribe to the channels where you're at. You may hear an ad on the audio platforms right now. That's it. Let's do this one. There's an allegation that's floated out. And I want you guys to listen to the allegations really, really carefully, because this is an allegation being made against Thomas Massey. Tom Massey is not a narrative guy. He's not an approved voice. He is on the wrong side of the guy that lied about energy prices, lied about getting into a war in Iran, lied about deporting everybody that didn't belong in this country, right? Lied about providing people with a smartphone. Pulled $3.5 billion out of a cryptocurrency. You know, the guy that sits in the White House, that guy, the guy who's doing the biggest summit. The only thing anyone's ever talking about, the biggest summit, like the only person that's talking about it, I think, is Donald Trump. So when you're off message for that, you get $10 million spent against you in a primary for a safe seat for Republicans. You guys have any idea how insane that is? This, I have to double check again. I think I told my wife it was the most expensive primary in American history. That may not be the case, but it is certainly one of the most contested primaries currently in this cycle. And when all else fails, accuse somebody of vague, slanderous sexual stuff. That's the best move. If you can dirty somebody up, maybe a lady could do it. The damage can be done long before it ever actually gets proven that this is garbage. I want you to listen, and we're going to pause and listen. This is Cynthia West making allegations about Tom Massey. And from listening to her own statement, the allegations are not clear, to say the least. I'm going to go ahead and interject in this, so we're not going to play this all the way through in its own. I also want you to notice the high production value of the very clean background, the professional lighting. It took me about 2 years to be able to acquire the equipment to do that. This woman, it took about 72 hours to have access to this stuff. She's in a political campaign right now, and you're like, oh, well, maybe she has big money behind her. She's running for school board of a county that you've never heard of, in a place that nobody cares about in Florida. Sorry if you live there, but nobody cares. This is the allegedly credible allegations that the MAGA influencer and the official media types have dived on top of and swallowed up with everything they've got, the way that Kash Patel swallows up either bourbon or Trump's knob. This is what this sounds like. Here we go.
My name is Cynthia West, and I believe it is important to speak up and hold those in power accountable. I will.
That doesn't mean anything, just so we're clear. Speak up and hold people in power accountable. Okay, we all agree, generically.
Will not be silenced. I will never back down, and I will never stop fighting for what is right. Yet.
Still, platitude, nothing. She also looks like someone is lighting her toes on fire underneath the camera, like they've got a blowtorch there because she's wincing.
Yes, Thomas Massey and I had a personal relationship. That's not a secret.
I'm going to tell you right now, let me just confess to you guys, Thomas Massey and I have a personal relationship, and that's not a secret anymore because I told you what the nature of that personal relationship is. It's not going to be defined in this video. I'll just tell you, occasionally he calls me, mostly starting off with our friend Steve Baker being in the hospital, and then occasionally we also share text messages back and forth. Sometimes it's memes. It's very little of significant substance, but it is definitely a personal relationship. It's a friendly one at that. That's what this woman literally is not going to define the personal relationship. Here we go. Is it physical? Is it amorous? Is it sexual? We're not going to talk about that.
And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Mm-hmm. But things dramatically changed. The relationship ended.
Okay. And now we're going to say something that may or may not have anything to do with the relationship. In fact, it doesn't even seem like it necessarily ties based on her words.
And I experienced conduct that I believe was inappropriate, intimidating, and designed to silence me.
Conduct by whom? What kind of conduct? Why would you believe those things? Why won't you substantiate?
Since speaking publicly, I faced...
Guys, she's shaking her head. Sometimes you do these body language analyses and you see someone do something. This is called discrediting body position, where you say something, but you shake your head no. It's really, really funny. It's only in people that are utterly unsophisticated and not used to controlling their body. When you know that you're lying and you're saying a lie, you're saying things, your body actually betrays you by making you do stuff. I saw this thing happen, and it's like my buddy used to do that to me when he would want me to say no. He would literally go, do you want me to come into your room right now and do a room inspection? He'd be shaking his head no, and I'd be like, oh, okay. No, I do not. Sorry, Sergeant.
Political retaliation, personal attacks, and the coordinated efforts to discredit me.
She literally came out of nowhere to say this thing. She popped up out of nowhere to say something that has nothing to do with anything. And then it turns out the things she's saying are not necessarily true. Like there may have been a $60,000 NDA, but it wasn't by Tom Massey. It was by Victoria Sparks, who I'll share her response. Apparently there was $5,000 involved that Tom Massey gave her, but it was, as far as we could tell, was for like an attorney's fees because she was going through a divorce. Anyway.
Frankly, that reaction says more about the culture of power and intimidation in politics than it does about me. Here's what I know. Transparency and accountability can not only apply when it's politically convenient. The same people who demand the truth from everyone else cannot suddenly hide behind attacks and intimidation.
She's literally said nothing thus far, by the way. Transparency and accountability have to be for everybody? Okay, fine. Yeah, we all agree.
When the questions are directed at them. I am running for school board in Okaloosa County because...
What was that? You're running for school board in Okaloosa County? I'd be curious if anybody wants to post, because I know that the average state representative in your state houses has to spend something like $25,000 total for their entire campaign to be able to get into office. I don't know what a school board campaign costs, but I bet you most of them are measured in the hundreds of dollars. And that's not what she's standing in front of, just for whatever it's worth. She's running for school board. She's running for school board in a place where Donald Trump is basically like their Lord and Savior. And so going after Massey obviously will have all these political repercussions. Let me also just say this. The people that hate Thomas Massey today, like really hate him on all the social media and all the sort of like political influencers and all that kind of stuff, and the media people on Fox and all that, they are literally one true social post away from loving Tom Massey if Donald Trump were to be able to do a U-turn, which he could do in a heartbeat. And they would all never even notice that they said something exactly the opposite of what they said 5 seconds ago.
I believe leadership should protect people, not pressure them into silence, whether that's in Congress or on the school board. The most important thing is transparency and accountability, and no amount of backlash is going to deter me from standing up for what I believe is right. Speaking out against powerful people, it's uncomfortable, it's difficult, but doing the right thing often is. My name is Cynthia West.
My name is Cynthia. What?
I'm running for school board, and I will always stand up to bullies.
My name is Cynthia West, and I will stand up to bullies. What are you talking about? Paid for by Cynthia West for Okaloosa County School Board. Guys, if you've never seen what AstroTurf looks like, that's what that looks like. Holy moly.
And you can always count on me to tell the truth.
Okay. I don't believe you at all.
My name is Cynthia West.
Yeah, we heard you. All right. So that's the story. And then let's get to the responses. We'll take them with a grain of salt. First of all, I don't think that's a credible witness, but take your pick. Victoria Sparks, her statement has been released by her office. It says Rep. Sparks has never heard of the alleged $5,000 settlement proposal or any other settlement proposals by Representative Tom Massey regarding allegations Ms. West brought against Rep. Sparks' office. The first time Rep. Sparks heard these accusations by Ms. West against Representative Massey was a few days ago in Ms. West's public video. On a personal level, Rep. Sparks considers Thomas Massey to be one of the strongest supporters of women in Congress and a defender of women's rights among her GOP colleagues. That may be his only flaw, Tom Massey. I'll tell him that today. Rep. Sparks has seen him in action. Ms. West was not terminated by our office. Rather, her temporary employment was not extended beyond the 90 days due to concerning conduct by Ms. West. A few months later, Ms. West brought allegations against Rep. Sparks' office, which Rep. Sparks denied and refused to settle during the pre-filing period. Recently, due to delays and other circumstances in this case, Rep. Sparks was willing to reconsider the settlement discussions in order to save taxpayer money and mitigate disruptions in the operations of the office. At no point did Rep. Sparks try to force Ms. West into a non-disclosure agreement. On the contrary, Rep. Sparks would be happy to publicly disclose all of the aspects of these allegations and the circumstances surrounding Ms. West's employment as to how the process is structured in Congress if permitted to do so. Then you read this. This is the other little fun part of this thing. This woman basically said that there was a friend in Savannah and the friend in Savannah decided to weigh in too. This is all social media bullshit drama. And it's always interesting when you try to make a lie, but you didn't get one of your friends on board and your friend is kind of like, hey, don't make me part of this crap. This is Anna_trades. Normally, I stay out of political drama, she says. But since I was the, quote, friend in Savannah that Cynthia referenced, I feel obligated to speak honestly about what I personally witnessed. Thomas and Cynthia visited my home in Savannah after the passing of his wife. From my recollection, it had only been a few months, and he was clearly heartbroken and grieving. I specifically remember conversations by the pool where he talked about how deeply the loss affected him. He did not come across as someone who was acting recklessly or maliciously. He was kind to Cynthia, respectful, and they appeared happy together at the time. I don't know what that, like if there was a relationship or what it meant, people, friends, whatever, who cares? I may ask about that, though, because I'm curious. I also personally knew Cynthia was going through a very difficult divorce at that time period and was unhappy with her legal representation. To my recollection, the $5,000 Thomas gave her or lent her was related to helping her obtain a different attorney during that divorce situation, and it was not hush money. Separately, Cynthia had an ongoing workplace complaint going on against Rep. Sparks' office where she discussed that she discussed long before any of this current public controversy. From what I understood at the time, those issues were about what she described as a toxic work environment. It had nothing to do with Thomas. I'm not speaking on politics or campaigns or what may or not may have been happening behind the scene. I can only speak to what I personally observed, and based on my experience of both of them, the timing of these allegations 1 week before election feels very strange. People can draw their own conclusions. I felt it was important to share firsthand context instead of speculation. So there you go. That's what we're leaning on. Good to go. This is something that's happening right now. People who are problematic to the mainstream narrative, whatever that may be, people who are willing to challenge and hold people accountable to their own words, people that want to, I don't know, see like America First policies, be America First, people who say, I'm a little bit disappointed in Donald Trump because I had this expectation he was going to do this thing and he's not doing the thing that I hoped he would do. And it's not because I changed my mind. It's because the expectations were no longer met. This is why these allegations are coming up. I have zero doubt about it. This is basically public enemy number 1 and number 2, and I don't know which order they are. This is Tucker Carlson and Thomas Massie talking about expectations versus reality under the Trump administration.
When I endorsed him, I thought we wouldn't have a new war. I thought we would get warrants for FISA that they had used to spy on him. I thought that Maha would be front and center at the HHS with Bobby Kennedy there. I thought that we would have sane foreign policy. I thought that where we put America first, that's my definition of sane. I thought we would end our involvement in the war in Ukraine. I thought we would release all the Epstein files and indict some of those SOBs. And those are all the things I'm still fighting for.
Roger that. That checks out. By the way, Tom Massie for Congress. This is his political campaign Twitter handle, and it posted the following. The contrived and false deposition released 1 week before my election was conducted by Kerry, who lost a primary election to me in 2012, in the law offices of Mercury, who lost an election to me in 2020, and then posted immediately by Dieters, who lost to me in 2024. Just saying. When all of your enemies line up to try to get somebody to say something in Florida who's running for some bullshit school board position, that might be what we would call a clue. I don't know. You guys, you can put your comments below whether you agree with me or not, but it looks like a smear. It looks like an op. It smells like an op. It looks like people doing things that are problematic, and somebody who's pushing the envelope will find themselves in a space where they are now going to have some issues. All right, so let's go to some really fun stuff. Let's go to how dumb are the people that are in charge? By the way, they're all the way dumb, if you were wondering. Like us on Rumble, like us on YouTube, subscribe if you haven't. You may hear an ad from Spotify. I like to give you guys the heads up. Spotify ad. All right. This is my favorite. This woman was described to me as a dim bulb, very nice, but very dim, not that smart. And it wasn't by Donald Trump, although they sound like Donald Trump descriptions. This is Anna Paulina Luna, former cocktail waitress at a strip club. No big deal. This is why you don't put people like that into Congress. They can't listen to the actual words that are said. And then they come up with things that sound like wild and exciting news. And then it turns out that news is in fact a lie. It's inaccurate. And you sound like a fool. The CIA does not raid people's offices because the CIA has no authority to do so. And the CIA didn't do that. She basically misunderstood something so simple, the congressional testimony of a whistleblower from the CIA in his opening statement. Here we go. You guys can love her, but she's dumb.
You also have some news coming out of the CIA that you'd like to share.
Yeah, so we were actually just notified that the CIA went in and took documents out of ODNI, multiple boxes pertaining to the JFK files as well as MKUltra. The reason why this is troubling is there was an executive order that the president had directed the full declassification of JFK, but then also to the MKUltra files. The CIA famously has said that, all documents were released and other documents had been destroyed. So these are allegedly those documents that that apparently never existed. And so very troubling. I did just talk to Chairman Comer, and we are sending in the next hour or so a preservation of documents request to the CIA. I have calls into the White House, to the director of the CIA himself. And so obviously, as this develops, we'll keep everyone up to date. But strange times we're living in.
Okay, roger that. Brianna Morello had to report. Update. DNI Tulsi Gabbard's team is denying that the CIA raided their office because that's what people took from what she just said. And so Jesse Waters went on and was like, Fox News breaking. There's some serious stuff going on. But we now have notification that there were
kamikaze dolphins.
There were kamikaze dolphins involved in the CIA raiding the office of the DNI. You can't do that because they don't have the authority. The DNI is the supervisory agency above the CIA, so that was always nonsensical. But what does sound like is that somebody came in from CIA while there was an ongoing declassification effort, and then they took the information from the office and they returned it back to CIA because they didn't want that to happen. Here's what actually was said. Here's what she was actually reporting on. She's just not a good listener, maybe.
The CIA refused to provide information necessary to understand why analytical standards at the CIA were violated. The CIA illegally monitored the computer and phone usage of DIG personnel, their investigations, and contact with whistleblowers. These were Americans being spied upon illegally while executing duties directed by the president and under the authority of the Director of National Intelligence. One CIA contractor assisting with the DIG's investigation into the events that transpired between 2022 and 2023 was fired by the CIA one day after meeting with the DIG. When the DIG ceased operations, the CIA also took back 40 boxes of JFK files and MK Ultra files being processed for declassification by DNI Gabbard.
All right. This story is being covered by Fox News, and they're excited about the COVID whistleblower stuff, and they're just excited about the lab leak, which, by the way, they used to deny because that's the way that Fox works. They just go with whatever the governmental piece is, right? But what he's saying is that Tulsi Gabbard, as we've been explaining here on this program, came in and I would say unexpectedly or maybe fortuitously or maybe, I don't know, defied my expectations. Tulsi Gabbard's step into that space was that she was going to try to actually do reform at the intelligence agencies. And you're going to be shocked to learn that the government of, by, and for the government wasn't really on board with that game. And so the 17 different agencies have about an 80% penetration, leaning the opposite way politically, and didn't want to give up the authorities and the things that they know are correct, regardless of who got elected. This is the definition of deep state. Deep state is not some sexy thing of people meeting in dark alleys or hiding. And no, it's people who just show up at their bureaucratic jobs and they believe that they know better than the American people, that they have more information, that they're more important, that they have better access, that they make better decisions, and that they, and they alone, in the roles that they are in, should be able to define the policies for the things that they do instead of following the orders. And here's the deal. They might know better, but that's not what our system is meant to do. And so they pushed back against what was called the Directors Initiative Group. This was a group of people that were compiled from across the intelligence agencies. You had people there from the various different military intelligence agencies and the civilian, and they all worked together theoretically and said, we are trying to go and find out what the accuracy and the truth is. We're going to try to carry out the mission, which was actually laid out in Donald Trump's de-weaponization promise to the American people. And Gabbard did her best to do it. Some of the casualties early on were things like what just happened to Joe Kent. Some of the casualties were people like Steve Baker, who got asked in there, and when he brought them a story, they were interested because they wanted to get to the actual truth. It's crazy that this is the explosive moments are talking about CIA and COVID. Did you hear what they took back? They took back JFK files, which are meant to be declassified. The question is did they actually obey the law? And the answer that Jim says is no, under oath. It's like no qualifiers, by the way. The right way to testify. Did the CIA violate the law when they did this? Yes, they violated it. Are they following the law? No. No further information. It's a simple sentence. It's declarative. He answers in the affirmative and the negative when necessary because he's testifying. You don't have to add a bunch of extra crap in, it turns out. What's interesting about this, couple pieces. Number one, the Democrats all skipped out on this hearing. And that says a lot, to me at least. They didn't even want to show up to be part of it. It's also interesting when it took place. I was talking to a reporter last night and had this pointed out to me. Donald Trump is in China, and that's when they were able to pull this thing off. That tells me that this thing was not something that was sanctioned by sort of the by the leadership. This is a story that I think the mainstream media and the GOP political establishment would rather not come out at all. They wouldn't like to be part of it, and the Democrats avoided it altogether. So let's go through the so-called most explosive revelations or allegations. CIA whistleblower James Erdman III testified the Biden administration buried the analysis that concluded a lab leak was the most likely origin of the COVID-19 pandemic in an explosive hearing on Wednesday. If you guys have listened to this program, it was well known in the FBI and it was well circulated in the FBI as well as the other intelligence agencies. And so when people were coming out and saying that it was not true and that Fauci, was saying that that was not the case and that there was pressure, all of this was like an open secret inside the agency. The difference is, was somebody in a position where they saw the actual analysts who wrote the actual documents making those assessments. And then when they did, was there a push to change them before they came out to the public? And that's what he was testifying to. He's testifying to the cover-up, not the fact that you guys probably already knew that it didn't happen because somebody ate a pangolin or a pangolin married a bat or something. So who is this guy? I like the way they describe him. Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, this is the chairman, Ron Paul, says Erdman, he's a 2-decade CIA veteran, chose to testify at great personal risk because government secrecy cannot become government impunity. Jim was in the Army. He was at the Ranger Battalion. So he's a stud and was a stud physically. He's a mental stud, and he would probably deny this if I said it to him. But when I tell people who I think of him, he's like what you think Jason Bourne is. Physically capable, individually very high capabilities in his personal capacity, and then mentally beyond what most of you guys can handle. He's smart, he's multilingual, and he's been there and done this stuff. He's been in places that the United States government denies being. He's like the last guy out in places that they didn't want to have anyone else when nobody else would stick around. He was guys shutting down shop, and I know just a little taste of it, just enough to know what was going on. So when he steps out there, this is not a man who's a victim. This is a man who knew this was coming, who told me that he was going to be asked to testify. And what did he say? He said something to the effect of, don't let them know that this is coming. Keep this quiet for now. They're going to pull me in on a moment's notice. And when they do, then you can talk about it. So here we are talking about it. The National Intelligence Directors Initiative Group, the Directors and Initiatives Group, the DIG, was the group that was probably the most hated in the entire intelligence community over the last, let's say, 18 months. Because they were trying to do the mission that the Trump administration actually ran on when it came to de-weaponizing government. They tried to do that thing. And what we found is the agency fought it at every turn, and Trump couldn't focus on probably the most dangerous thing there was. Energy policy is important. Getting rid of all the illegal aliens, those would have been the top ones. If you had any other intelligent thought in your head, you would say a group of people tried to kill me. A group of people tried to deplatform me, bankrupt me, imprison me, and make me spend the rest of my life behind bars. Those people are my priority. I'll tell you this. If anybody ever gave me a position of power, I would look to the people that came and tried to hurt my family and tried to hurt your families, and I would try to defang them. I wouldn't necessarily try to punish them. I wouldn't try to destroy them. I would try to make sure they couldn't do it again, whatever that looks like. I would mitigate that problem. That would be my singular focus. I don't know why Donald Trump did not have that. I don't have any insight into the way his mind works. I can't fathom trying to sell people a golden Chinesium phone for $500 when it costs $160 retail. I don't know how to do that. That's not how I'm wired. That's not how Jim is wired. That's not how Garrett O'Boyle or Steve Friend are wired. We don't work that way. This transactional thing that at least as long as I get mine, then I'm going to be good. But I guarantee you this. If you gave me an opportunity to tear apart the thing that was going to kill my family and kill your family and do evil things to American freedom, that would be my singular focus. Probably for me over illegal aliens. That's like a big problem. A narrow problem is government is doing things that government is not allowed to do. How do we make that freaking thing stop? And I would work on that. 100%, that's where my focus would be. According to his testimony, the CIA scientific analysts concluded multiple times in 21 and 2023 that a lab leak was the most likely origin of COVID-19. This is what Rand Paul was saying in his opening statement, yet those conclusions never shaped the official narrative. They never made it into an intelligence report, and Congress was never told. I also know that Jim did things that other whistleblowers have never done. The allegation that the CIA has basically made is that he's not a whistleblower. He's just a guy that accepted an opportunity to come and testify to raise his public profile. Well, first of all, nobody wants this shit. Nobody wants this thing at all. And he's going to be in a bad place basically for the rest of his life where he's looking over his shoulder in the same way that any of my buddies who have been involved in this will be. Here's another person who's had that experience. Interestingly enough, on Jesse Waters' program, saying something that's like obviously true. It takes tremendous courage to go and do something like this. And his whistleblower activity, it goes back literally years. I know for a fact that was happening on because I was being told about it while it was happening from not just Jim, but from others. And then add into the fact that him standing in that space and testifying to Congress is in fact a whistleblower action as defined by the whistleblower statutes, period. You don't need to seek out whistleblower validation or protections from your agency. The act of going to Congress and notifying them of a violation of rule, policy, or federal law, or something that involves inherent risk to the public or gross fraud, waste, and abuse, those things are all covered statutorily as being a whistleblower. The action of being a whistleblower is whistleblowing. It's not asking for permission to be a whistleblower by the agency that's going to say no. And his claims on what should happen to the Office of the Inspector General is actually correct. The problem is the only way that you're going to be able to regulate these agencies is by taking the authority to look into their malfeasance outside of the agencies, and nobody will do it. So we're going to end up with more of the same. The government will investigate the government and find that the government did nothing wrong and that Jim Erdman is the problem.
John Kiriakou is a former CIA officer and whistleblower. Does this jive with how things are done at the agency? Someone just makes a phone call and everything changes?
Unfortunately, yes. We see this kind of thing all the time. And Jesse, at the heart of this story is that it's always best to tell the truth. The truth always comes out. And I want to comment on the whistleblower, too. This was a very brave thing he did. He put his reputation on the line today. He told the world exactly what the truth was. He'll probably never work in government again because of it. But now we have an idea of what was being done secretly, yet in our name.
And Fauci got pardoned. So yes, he may have killed 1 million Americans. We don't know if the exact virus was Frankensteined out that he paid for, but still, I mean, and then he just walks away like nothing happened?
My cousin George Kaletsu was the second person in the state of Ohio to die of COVID back in very early 2020. That death still stings all of us in our family. And now I can't help but to look at Dr. Fauci and think, you liar. Look what you've done to our country. And you're right. He was auto-penned right into freedom and wealth and untold riches in his retirements. That is unacceptable.
He was protected, and so was China, which makes it even worse. And this should...
Everybody's talking about that China summit, aren't they? That's where we're at right now, seeing if we can get things done right. Have we onshored all the pharmaceutical logistical supply chain that was meant to be done? Was that one of those priorities? Have we done the national security actions of trying to divest from China? Are we still buying things from them on a regular basis? Yeah, of course we are. I'm still doing it. You are too. If you have Amazon, if you have Walmart, if you have Target, if you have any of the online ordering capabilities that people have, we're all buying from that stuff. Why were the Democrats not there? They weren't. You want to see their empty seats? I do too. And we're going to go to Jim's opening statement, which we'll wrap up with. I'm going to post the entirety of the interview. I pulled it all from C-SPAN yesterday. I'm going to post the entirety of it over at kyleseraphin.com on locals, because I don't want to lose that, because that will be mentally thrown away. And so if you guys are interested in sitting and looking to the entire of his testimony, which is worthwhile, it's something that Anna Paulina Luna should have done before she went out there and said dumb things that were false. If you guys are interested in listening to it, and you want to take it over a weekend somewhere and you want to just hear, these hearings are not super impactful, but he's smart, he's articulate, and there's no Democrats that are in there that are asking contrary questions. Here's how you know.
Or you could see over the left shoulder of Senator Ron Johnson the empty seats of Democrats, and we can show. I mean, look at that room, and even James Erdman, who is the whistleblower witness today, was asked about, and I believe it was Bernie Moreno who asked him this. How does that make you feel knowing that those Democrats aren't there? And he says that, of course, I wish that they were. I mean, you want everyone to know what he has to say. What is the take on his role on this, though, from Democrats? I know you said that there might have been kind of a joke moment with one of them, but they can't completely ignore this.
Yes, they can.
Well, they are ignoring it, apparently, Harris. We'd love to ask them what they think about this testimony, but they're not here. They're not in the room. And the witness has given some pretty interesting testimony so far. You know, he's part of the CIA, active member CIA. He said that in August of 2021, the intelligence community was ready to basically declare that the COVID-19 pandemic began as a leak from that Chinese lab in Wuhan. And then the witness says that Dr. Anthony Fauci injected himself into those discussions, into the intelligence community, and was able to influence those conversations and get that classification changed from the potential lab leak theory to just a neutral theory. So we'll see what else he says in there today.
This image of the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files standing behind Donald Trump continues to be one of the most important images in my brain, and I hope it's burned into yours as well. Because whenever I hear Trump say something that doesn't make any sense, whenever I hear something that is like completely disaligned with the agenda that he ran on, I always have to remember that there's somebody else that's pulling this string. This is what it looks like in a visual, fantastical representation of one human being standing there. Just the anonymous guy in the overcoat, gray hair, weathered face, smoking a cigarette and making calls that nobody else gets to because they think they know the best. The reason I'm sitting here today is because of what Anthony Fauci did in 2021. The reason that our country has a significant and deep distrust at a younger generation than maybe ever before of what our government can and can't do and like what voting may or may not be is because of what happened in late 2020 and then the response to it in 2021. If you guys remember, we got a COVID mandate that the entire federal government and all of the workforce of people that had more than 100 people working in their company nationwide had to go get a shot that was untested, that didn't actually seem to have any reason to have it. And you could still get the freaking disease despite having that shot with unknown amounts of crazy side effects that made a bunch of people into billionaires. That whole thing went down. Why? Why did we have that mandate? It was almost 1-to-1. There was a disastrous policy withdrawal from Afghanistan, a terrible decision that resulted in the loss of 13 service members, and then immediately a news cycle change was needed because we had a guy that was basically out to lunch and asleep at the wheel in the White House. It went from being international politics to being national politics to being deeply personal for a lot of us that are not going to let it go. I'm not done with COVID. I'm not done with the story of COVID. The other day, my post was that I intend to be completely insufferable whenever they try to roll out whatever the next lockdown looks like. By insufferable, what I mean is I will violently resist it. And I'm not making that as a light allegation. I basically decided my line in the sand is if you come and try and stop my freedom again over some bullshit that I know is bullshit in real time because of the way that you conveyed it, it's not convincing unless you have an IQ south of like 90. If that turns out to be the case that happens again, with this being my witness right now and all of you listening, like I will be on the line and it's going to get ugly real quick. And I will rule out nothing when it comes to resisting it. Because like last time, I was restrained. I was very restrained. I was a dick about certain things. Like I wasn't nice to people. I'm going to start with laughing at you for wearing the mask, laughing at you for wearing the Tyvek suit, laughing at you for believing a government that lies to you by principle. And it's going to only progress into physicality when anybody decides to say something. And the sad thing is, it's going to be the good Germans, just like it was the people that I worked with last time that enforced it. It'll be the people that should be willing to give up their lives to protect your civil liberties, to protect the thing that they swear allegiance to, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution of the United States, and it's going to be those people that will try to enforce and take that shit away from you. And I already know it because I already met them. And 90% of them rolled over and said, I've got a paycheck and I've got a pension coming up in a couple of years and I've got alimony because I wasn't able to keep my marriage together. So I owe money on a house and a former life, and I have this job, and that job is actually more important to me than my duty, my obligation, and the sacred oath that I swore when I raised my hand and said in front of God that I was going to not do this thing. I immediately forgot about that because my operational morality doesn't actually hold me to it. And I never ever thought about what that thing was. I just clicked accept, like I was accepting the terms on an iPhone agreement or an Android on a Chinesium Trump phone, as my buddy Steve Friend liked to point out at the time. Is the government willing to break the law because the government thinks the government is above the law? 100%. That was in the testimony. Here's Rand Paul talking to Jim about it yesterday.
Is it your testimony that there is still resistance from the CIA to comply with the law we passed to declassify all the COVID information?
Yes.
That's it.
One of the things that I think is new today that I'm hearing from your testimony is that from an early period of time, you believe, and the information you're aware of, is that CIA scientists from an early time after the pandemic began, 2020, 2021, were concluding that the lab leak was the most likely hypothesis?
Yes, Senator. I'd like to offer some qualifications on that as well. A lot of the issues occurred at the interagency space, at the National Intelligence Council, the individuals responsible for conducting or writing WMD analysis. So, and many of those individuals are on JDA from the CIA. But yes, very early, as early as 2020, there were agencies within the IC circulating papers that that said, hey, there's, for example, DOE circulated a paper in May of 2020 that said that all the conditions were present for a lab leak. And I could go through the timeline, but yes, my short answer is yes, periodically throughout 2020 all the way to 2024. Yes.
I think the arguments, pro and con for what is the evidence on whether this came from a lab or it came from nature are still important. So for years, we've been asking the CIA to produce the scientists, either in a classified setting or a public setting, to discuss the arguments. I don't see any reason why the arguments should be classified. One of the arguments that's made publicly is that the source looks like it came from a single source of RNA, not like 5 different types of viruses or 20 different types like you had with SARS 2003, but it came from one source. And virtually everybody argues that sort of indicates a lab and not a nature. And so those arguments are important scientific arguments to have, but we've been prevented from having them. We've been preventing from getting all of the declassified information. But what I think is of importance that's new today is that your testimony is that the CIA scientists were concluding that it was lab, but then when this, there was a 90-day study in 2021, and this study was done by NIC, led by NIC. Tell us what NIC is again.
It's the National Intelligence Council, and individuals responsible for writing various WMD and bio-related issues led that.
So when they had this study, they had CIA scientists telling them, look, the evidence, the scientific evidence looks like it came from the lab. But then they brought in Anthony Fauci. And is it your opinion that Anthony Fauci was able to overrule the scientist or get NIC to conclude somehow that there wasn't a conclusion to be had here, we're going to be neutral, contradicting what the scientists were telling them?
So there's 2 questions there, and I want to break them up into 2. One is, where were the injection points, Dr. Anthony Fauci? Where did Dr. Anthony Fauci and when did he inject himself into the IC? And the other half of that question, if I'm, and I don't want to extrapolate too much here, is, okay, what happened with why was there a change in analysis?
This isn't new, but it's a nuanced discussion that is not going to be picked up in a meaningful way. And here's the crazy thing. If you guys have been paying attention to this, and we covered it at the time, this is from September of 2023, while Biden was president. It says staff on the Select Subcommittee, Coronavirus Pandemic Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence have heard testimony from a whistleblower alleging the CIA offered 6 analysts significant monetary incentives to change their position on COVID-19's origin. The whistleblower, who presents as a highly credible senior level CIA officer, alleges that the 7 members assigned to the CIA's task team analyzing COVID-19 origins, and 6 officers concluded that the virus was likely originating in a lab in Wuhan, China. The CIA, however, allegedly offered financial incentives to the 6 experts involved in the investigation to change their conclusion in favor of a zoonotic origin story. That was the cover-up immediately for the push to justify those mandates, to whitewash what was going on. When the CIA comes out, and they did, and make the allegation, I think this is the story here. No, that's something else. Here we go. This is the story that's coming for, this is Fox 45, I think, Fox Baltimore. Okay. For years, the so-called lab leak hypothesis was labeled by top public health officials as a conspiracy theory or a fringe idea, but a senior officer inside the agency, subpoenaed by Homeland Security, said it was always the prevailing theory in the intelligence community. This is what happened in the last couple of days. They're talking about what Erdman was saying. The best is getting the response from the CIA. And here's the response from Liz Lyons, the director of public affairs at the CIA, which theoretically answers to Donald Trump, who would want the answers on this, but they don't. Talking about the committee that Rand Paul hosts, the committee acted in bad faith. Let me put this in the center of the screen. By subpoenaing a CIA officer for testimony today without notifying CIA, despite having already obtained closed-door testimony from the individual previously. The witness testifying today is not appearing as a whistleblower in pursuit of the truth, but instead as a response to the subpoena issued by Chairman Paul. Whistleblower, 2023, September. Anything that the CIA says is bullshit on this, period. The reason that they'll go after him is because what he said was obviously true and damaging. And there you have it. Closed door testimony given to the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence in a classified setting. This has already been done, but not for the American people. So for anyone who's asking, where the hell has he been? What has he been doing? Why was this? Why did this take so long? Why is this coming out now in 2026 when it could have come out earlier? It did come out earlier. It just didn't come out in a way that you could actually read it. And it makes me sick because they're going to go after Jim. And having been through it once in a lighter way with a less dangerous, although more overt agency, it's a real problem. I'm going to play his entire opening statement at the end of this podcast. So we'll run the outro and I will play the entirety of his opening statement. It's 11 minutes long. You guys are welcome to listen to it. I know some people will not. But I wanted to at least immortalize it on here as the 11 minutes that he thought was important to share when given an opportunity to say what he was going to say. And so I will make it a chapter on YouTube, if you guys want to skip to that at some point, or if you guys see it and then you got there first and you're like, oh, what's going on here? That's where it is. There's a lot of things that are happening that all seem, which is a concerted effort to take voices that are in opposition, but are accurate and neutralize them for the comforting lies that exist, that let people just go back to their Amazon, let them go back to their Costco memberships, let them go back to Uber Eats or whatever the hell it is that people order their burrito up. And just not pay attention to a lot of this stuff. And you know what? It would often be nicer to walk around and not know how much evil is going on and how unjust this world really, really is. It's overwhelming to me. I hope you guys unplug sometimes from that. If you're listening to this podcast regularly, you're just like, shit, man. Is it always that dark? It's like, the more you know, the worse it looks. Which is why I don't actually want to see this system continue the way it is. I just don't think you can fix it. I honestly don't. I'm not being funny. When I played this yesterday, or I put this up on the screen yesterday, we knew the answer. I had that scene from Boondock Saints in my head this morning as well. It's like everybody knows what the answer is. Somebody somewhere should just go and end this stuff, these people that are evil. That was the lure of Boondock Saints. I was in high school when that came out, or college. I'll have to look up what year it came out. Hold on. Look it up. Boondog. Yeah, 1999. I was just graduating high school. You remember how therapeutic the movie Boondock Saints was when you were younger, or 25, 30 years ago? You watched that and you're like, take the bad guys and make them not a problem anymore. Mitigate the evil. Vince Flynn came up to the same conclusion in politics in 1997 as Troy Duffy did. I don't even know why I still know the director of the movie who wrote it, but Troy Duffy made Boondock Saints in 1999. In the late 90s, we all were like, this is bullshit. And some bad things are going to happen to some bad people for real freedom to keep existing. It's going to happen. And I'm not wanting it. I told you in 2024, it's bad for me. I've got babies. But there is zero doubt in my mind that the number of evil plans being hatched by people who don't know that they're being evil, they don't even know it. They think they're the good guy. I'm just feeding my family. That's why I'm doing this horrible thing, whatever it is. All those people. We knew the answers in the late 1990s. And if you guys want to be honest, like about where I don't get conspiratorial about a lot of stuff. I don't know the story, what happened on 9/11. It's not my thing. But what I do know is that there was a budding, aggressive, and pervasive sentiment in this country that we were probably going to have some violence to be able to straighten some things out. And Boondock Saints, which was a major pop culture hit for a very, very minor budget, everybody my age in their 40s watched that movie and was like, yup, I need a wall full of suppressed pistols, knives, and ropes and shit. By the way, I've got every single thing that they used in that movie, like on my walls, probably because I saw that stuff. And so everybody knew that. And everybody who read Term Limits at the time or has read it since, and the story of Term Limits from Vince Flynn is that a couple of special operators who came out of a background of violence decided to go apply that to the political solution and solve the problem in a swift thing and say, give us back our country or we take all of you out, which is the same story as the Boondock Saints. That was all in the late 90s for a reason. And then guess what? You took all of that violence, you took all of that frustration and rage in a bunch of men that were my age and older, and you applied it overseas in the global war on terrorism. And so you basically channeled a huge amount of national frustration overseas, where it was safely away from the people that were actually causing a lot of the problems that we've had. I can't unthink the things that I think about that. So that is my ongoing analysis, that we had an opportunity. And they recognized it at the time, whoever the they is, we always use the they, and they turned around and pointed people to an external foe. And I suspect that we will see something very soon in the next probably 2 or 3 years. 97, 99, 2001, we're right in that range. Within the next 2-3 years, we will see something that will try to focus the frustration, the animosity, the disillusionment of the American populace onto an external source. It has to happen, because I don't think there's any other way around it. Guys, if you're in my chat, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making this a thing that I get to do, because I can't work at a regular job after what I did. And Jim Erdman's about to experience that as well. Support our sponsors if you're in the market for any of those things. I've got in fact, I may query our people over on Locals. We have the possibility of taking on a fractional gold company, and they make money by a membership fee, transparent fees, and they allow you to buy like less than a full ounce of gold. If you guys can't afford like a $500 coin, or you can't buy like a piece of bullion or something, a 1 ounce coin, which is like $4,000, $5,000 now, they'll allow you to put money in and own fractional ownership of it. I don't know if that's interesting. So I'm gonna poll the people over on Locals that are members of our Locals channel. I don't think it's a betrayal of what we're doing. Transparently, I don't know if I'm a fractional gold kind of guy, but there may be an interest if some of you guys are interested. If you're interested in being able to buy something for less than the entire price of it, like I think they'll sell you like $10 in silver, and you'll just own a piece of like an ounce of silver, stuff like that. So that may not be a thing for everybody, but as I continue to do, I'm only willing to monetize on things that I think make sense. It's not a personal product I would do, but I don't think it's bad. So we'll talk about that. Anyway, that's on Locals. If you guys want to join the discussion there, I will do a poll for everybody that's a member of our Locals. There's maybe 1,500 people that are part of that. So curious what you guys think, in so much as if that's interesting to anybody. God bless all of you. Thank you for listening. I'm going to play Jim Erdman's piece after this, and that's what you'll hear if you guys listen after the outro. kind of a heavy show today. I understand. I think it's a heavy topic, and that's okay. Tomorrow we'll do Friendly Friday a little bit. I'm going to be on Alex Jones at noon. If you guys want to talk to, it's noon Central, so 1 o'clock on Eastern. So I got to go take a quick jog around the parking lot and jog around the neighborhood, and then I'm going to jump back on, and I'll see you guys again, and then I'll go talk to Tom Massey, and we'll just keep doing this. This is the job. So thanks for being it. We'll see you on the call-in show tonight, also at 8 o'clock Eastern. Holy moly. It's going to be a long day. Love you guys. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.
Good morning, Chairman Paul and other members of the Oversight Committee. Thank you for the complimentary introduction, and I appreciate the committee's dedication to transparency and accountability. I am a career CIA operations officer, and as you mentioned, I was on joint duty assignment at the Office of Director National Intelligence Directors Initiatives Group, or the DIG, between March 2025 and April 2026. I was responsible for leading the DIG's investigation into COVID origins, anomalous health incidents, and unidentified anomalous phenomena. I'm here today to discuss the COVID cover-up, the national security implications associated with the DIG's investigative findings, and CIA refusal to comply with lawful oversight, as well as how we remedy these problems. Intelligence community leaders and senior analysts downplayed the possibility that the COVID pandemic originated as a result of a lab incident. Motives are difficult to define given the scope of the DIG's review. Intentional or not, the IC's actions resulted in a cover-up, wasted resources, and a failure to properly inform policymakers. Public health policy would have been very different had the American public been made aware that a virus from a lab in China was going to serve as the foundation for an emergency use authorization mRNA products being mandated by the former administration. Dr. Fauci's role in the cover-up was intentional. Dr. Fauci influenced the analytical process and findings by leveraging his position to ensure the IC consulted with a conflicted list of curated subject matter experts, public health officials, and scientists. This included some of the authors of the paper, The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2, and other public health experts who have been in his orbit for the last 20-plus years. Some of the scientists were part of the Biological Sciences Experts Group, or the BSEG, an office of Director National Intelligence Advisory Body, whose members often receive considerable funding from NIAID and public health agencies. The BSEG scientists influenced national laboratory WMD research, policy decisions, finished analysis, and other intelligence matters, creating misaligned incentives and conflicts of interest, as well as counterintelligence issues. Since 2006, the BSEG consulted part-time on biodefense issues for the IC, while conducting government-funded research and holding academia positions, as well as maintaining roles in public health institutions and serving as members in the National Academy of Science. They received funding from NIAID and other agencies for vaccine research, USAID's PREDICT project, the Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, and even worked with Chinese scientists on coronavirus and other pathogen studies pursuing vaccines. There was no oversight monitoring how this web of relationships influenced research, policy, and public health in any holistic way for over 20 years. In fact, several of the BSEG scientists helped Dr. Fauci rewrite definitions of gain of function in 2015 to lift a funding pause on dangerous research. Still others participated in planning Event 201 in 2019. This was a coronavirus pandemic tabletop exercise, curiously similar to the events that played out during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was attended by Dr. Fauci and individuals with IC ties like former DNI Avril Haines. The CIA and DNI analytic managers responsible for examining the origin of COVID made decisions inconsistent with the conclusions of subject matter experts and analytical tradecraft, consistently favoring the theory of zoonosis or natural origin. Following the CIA's COVID relook that culminated in 2023, the CIA retaliated against analysts supporting the lab leak hypothesis. CIA analysts were not bribed. The analysts that supported the 2023 lab leak conclusion took every administrative measure available to them to address their deep concerns regarding the analytic integrity of their finished intelligence. CIA managers retaliated against them for their refusal to agree with management's middle-of-the-night anonymous rewrite of the analysis, which changed the assessment to a non-call judgment. Dr. Anthony Fauci's influence over the IC's COVID origin analysis and the witting and unwitting role some BSEG scientists and IC personnel played in the cover-up exposed why this issue is of deep concern. Failure to address the United States government's inability to differentiate between public health and biodefense and the oversight-resistant ecosystem of life science actors has been fertile ground for increasingly dangerous continental United States gain-of-function research, as well as similar research conducted in U.S. government-supported labs abroad. Post-9/11 changes in public health and biodefense roles and responsibilities have blurred the lines between scientists, the military, the intelligence community. It has resulted in a deliberately opaque and excessively redundant biodefense research policy and financial infrastructure, seemingly intended to escalate bureaucratic bloat. This is a national security crisis caused by the inability to provide real oversight. The systematic failures associated with muddled boundaries between biodefense and public health and an overly complex infrastructure have been exacerbated by documented efforts to circumvent oversight. CIA did not comply with lawful oversight during the Diggs investigation. The behavior significantly impacted Director Gabbard's implementation of several EOs issued during this administration and tasked to the Dig. The CIA refused to provide information necessary to understand why analytical standards at the CIA were violated. The CIA illegally monitored the computer and phone usage of Dig personnel, their investigations, and contact with whistleblowers. These were Americans being spied upon illegally while executing duties directed by the President and under the authority of the Director of National Intelligence. One CIA contractor assisting with the Diggs investigation into the events that transpired between 2022 and 2023 was fired by the CIA one day after meeting with the Dig. When the Dig ceased operations, the CIA also took back 40 boxes of JFK files and MK Ultra files being processed for declassification by DNI Gabbard. The legislative and executive branches will continue to be misinformed if this type of behavior is not addressed. The partial solution to dangerous gain of function has already been laid out in Executive Order 14292, improving the safety and security of biological research. We need a comprehensive review of government-funded life science research and a move back to pre-9/11 definitions of gain of function and WMD research, particularly in the IC and DHS. More broadly, we need effective oversight. We must hold agencies responsible for failure to comply with Executive Order 14292, and oversight must have teeth. You must be willing to pull the purse strings, and if necessary, convene another church committee. The results of our investigation would have been impossible without whistleblowers willing to come forward. They are indispensable agents for reform. Despite statutory law, agency regulation, and training requirements, whistleblowers are almost never protected. Whistleblower protections always seem to protect the agency. Every time the CIA investigates itself, they coincidentally find no wrongdoing. When they do identify issues, they hold the system responsible. That last statement is a verbatim response from a Europe and Eurasia Mission Center lawyer when the CIA Office of Inspector General did identify shortcomings so serious, oversight bodies were holding meetings about it 3 years after the events transpired. It was in response to the question, was anyone held accountable? Apparently the system is good enough. The only way we solve this issue is with real accountability for failure to comply with executive and legislative branch oversight and an escape valve where whistleblowers can continue to contribute to mission free from retaliation. All IG elements need to be removed from the agencies and fall under a separate entity controlled by the IC Inspector General. The personnel in IG elements should be 1811 certified with regular DOJ and legislative oversight reporting responsibilities. Thank you, and my written statement provides far more details related to these issues. I look forward to your questions.